It's great to be here with you. It's been a lot of fun, this missions conference celebration this weekend, all the different people and stories and places from around the world. So I'm sorry more of you couldn't make it in for even the food was amazing, everything. There's a lot of hospitality, and it's a privilege really to think about how small our world is and to meet people we read about things every time you turn on the TV or you look at the news. If you look at the news to get informed, there's stuff randomly from any place in the world, literally, and places you can't even find on a map. You're like, what is that? Where is that? Uruguay is one of those places. People are like, Uruguay, what is that? And they always confuse it with Paraguay. Every time I don't know what they say to when you say you're from Paraguay. People are like, Uruguay, Paraguay, what's the difference? And there's like two totally different worlds. They're next to each other on the map, but two countries couldn't be more different. The only two that could be more different are Colombia, where my wife is from, and Uruguay. And so we lived all those years in Colombia, and it's like night and day difference. People say, well, don't they both speak Spanish? Well, they do. But it's kind of like the difference between Colombia and Uruguay, the Spanish is like maybe an American going to Ireland or Scotland. Yeah, they're speaking English and you can even understand them if they're talking to you well, but if you all of a sudden are the only American in a room full of Scots or Irish, and you don't even know if it's your language. And so that's what happened when we went from Colombia to Uruguay. But it's been amazing. There's so many unusual stories of God working through people like you and me to bring tangible help and healing and hope to people all over the planet who really are trapped in a sense of chaos and oppression and violence, darkness, disconnection. And the darkness and evil around us is not just a metaphor. It's very real. Many people like us right here, with religious communities and political freedoms, material comforts, and strong community support systems, good schools. You may argue with that and the different things, but we have a lot of things in our life and people, and still we're struggling to survive and to cope with our circumstances. And we're struggling to cope with the overflow of so much information and so much opportunity. And everybody has something we should do, something else we should be doing to improve or to grow or to succeed. And then there's just this obscene obsession and hypersexualized materialism. Everything is material and sexual in this globalized postmodern culture that we're in. Death and violence all around us in the news, natural disasters, terrorism, accidents, murders, wars, and a never-ending verbal assault. People talking badly, terrible things about each other, gossip and slander to our neighbors, families, and friends. And you know what? These things are done by people just like us. Is the whole world crazy? Or is it just the people? Or is it me? I keep a book on my bookshelf. I like it just for the title. I actually never read it. It's there. I love books. I read lots of books. But this book's there. I just love the title. It's written by John Ortberg. He always has great titles. I don't know if he comes up with them or his wife or who comes up with them, the title, but it's called Everybody is Normal Until You Meet Them, until you get to know them. Everybody's normal until you get to know them. And so I wondered if his wife helps him, because people have thanked me for the different things I've shared during the weekend, but really, my wife is the super help in the coaching and helping and putting it together. Everybody has a different role and a different place to do their job. So last night I shared some sobering insights from international experts from a conference I attended on the problem of violence against children all around the world. It's a global problem. And then we looked at scriptures to find a way forward from Paul, the apostle. And this morning I want to start off with a quote from a celebrated movie scene that perhaps some of you have seen, maybe lots of you, and a testimony about God's work in my life. And then a few quotes from some other people. I'll tell about that when we get there. But we're heading towards this humbly exhilarating teaching from the Apostle Paul that is really about our reality, our identity. Who am I? Our vocation, like what we do, and our calling. Our vocation and our calling, our identity, puts together our highest joy. Like if I could be anyone, do anything, really find something that filled me with joy and energy, the greatest possibility for my life, the best version of me, what would that be? So are you ready? So Marcus Aurelius, you can Google him, he'll have his famous quotes. He was an emperor of Rome. And one of his simple but powerful quotes was immortalized for many people by that actor Russell Crowe. You've heard of Russell Crowe? Seen him in a lot of movies. But in the opening scene of Gladiator, Gladiator came out a while ago, but it was a gory movie, probably about 20 minutes too long. But it became a blockbuster in part because it dealt with some of the deepest issues of the human heart. Every person has these questions. In the movie, it's talking about the hurts in a heart. And it's putting together this guy's anguished sorrow and his rage-fueled revenge. His whole purpose and focus in life is like how he's going to make somebody pay. But it's asking the question, does my life have any purpose or meaning? The actor, the character that Russell Crowe is portraying is saying, is there anything in life worth living for? Is there anything in life worth dying for? Does anything I do or become contribute any purpose or meaning to the life of somebody else? So, Gladiator says, yes. He's rallying his troops into battle. He's not the gladiator yet. He was the commander of troops, Roman troops, and he's riding horses before them. And if you remember the scene, he looks out. They're just about to go into battle, so he's trying to make an inspirational speech. And he says to them, brothers, what you do today on the field of battle will echo in eternity. So here at Pender, today, throughout this week, in your own lives, we're making choices. We're fighting battles. Brothers and sisters, what you do today will echo in eternity. Your life speaks to those sitting closest to you, even some people sitting near you. Those people closest to you, even some who are sitting near you. Because I know, I once sat where you sit. I've been in a lot of churches across the years. So I'm 51 years old. Young to some, old to others. But in my life, I've rarely missed the opportunity. When I was younger, I was obligated. But I've rarely missed the opportunity to be in church on Sunday. It's more than genetic. You know, where I am in Uruguay, my mother is Uruguayan. My family, her family's been in Uruguay and Argentina for generations. But I'm there, and people are telling me in Uruguay, look, religion is not in our DNA. This is a small world. Somebody came up to me after the last service and said they lived at one time in their life in Carrasco. That's the neighborhood where our church is. And so she was not a Uruguayan. But a Uruguayan says that the religion is not in our DNA. That's something you Americans. You know, it's so American to be religious and be telling everybody about your religion. And I say, no, it's more than genetic. They say, what's your tradition? It's your family. It's more than that. This is my calling. This is my home, to be in church with the people of God. Even when I don't know who you are, we're looking to say, Lord, give me faith for this week. But it all started when I was a boy. The Community Missionary Church of Wilmore, Kentucky took missions very seriously. So did my family. We had missions speakers every month. We had our major missions celebration annually. The faith promise was the biggest, most important thing in our small congregation. When I was in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, our faith promise goal in that church was a huge thermometer. Like they built this giant thermometer, they put it right in the front, and it sat there all year long. Like it was embarrassing if you brought a friend and be like, what's that? And you try to explain faith promise, and no. But it was there for a good reason. Those good folks gave more money to missions than they did to the budget of the church. I know that my parents gave money to many missionaries and causes that were not even a part of our church giving. So I remember giving $5 before I was old enough to count 100 pennies. I was asked because it included the smallest children to the largest adult. Faith promise was not about how much you give. It's the idea of, are you willing, if God provided it, to give that money to Him? What would you give if you had the opportunity? When I was young, what used to come through our house all the time was a publishing house sweepstakes or something like that. And there was just mail all the time. You won! Just turn this in, pay this money, buy this product, whatever it was. And so we would think, wow, Mom, we could win $1 million. Or however much it was. And we wanted to win that. And since we didn't have the money, we would dream of all the things we could do once we were wealthy. But there's a principle in life. If you make the decision to give the money when you become wealthy, you'll never get there. You'll never give the money. It's proven over and over again. When you make the decision that if the Lord provides, I'll give as it's available, you change your whole life and the life of those around you. People that wait and they think, well, next year when I get that bonus. But you know what? There will always be more expenses than there is money. There'll always be a greater need. And so it's a decision that we make. And they said, what would you give? I courageously filled out my card, took it to the front, and prayed for my $5 for that year. The next year they challenged us, if God provided that for you, why don't you double the amount? So I did. When I was in 6th grade, I used to cut grass. And I had no idea how to charge. Say, how much? I think these poor, these guys, maybe they give me $5. I said, I'll cut your grass for $5. And I would do it, or $10, whatever it was. So I would tithe 10%. I put a little bit in the bank. I gave half of what was left to my parents, because they said they provided the lawnmower and the food. I bought my own gas, pushed my mower around town. And by 6th grade, I was thrilled. I reached my goal of $600 for Faith Promise that year. I was excited. But this isn't about me. This is really about the point of the example of the people around me is what was speaking to my life. Their lives spoke to me. Most of those people are gone now. My Sunday school teacher from like 2nd and 3rd grade still sends us $10 a month. And more than the $10 a month, it's like the idea that that person who believed in me then believes in me now. And is still supporting, and they don't do it even for me. They do it for the Lord. It's a joy to be able to give and to know. I had a strong personal experience of making myself available to give anything and go anywhere to honor God and serve people in cross-cultural missionary service. So I've spent my life investing in people, involved in missions, knowing that what we do here today matters. It matters into eternity. That's why I'm standing here. And people at Pender United Methodist Church, some of you have been here for a quarter of a century, 25 years or more. And you've been a part of every life that we've touched in Latin America and around the world for the last 25 years. That's how long we've been supported, and I think 25 years. My parents never changed in their lifestyle of giving. So across 5 decades, I have personally seen and lived in real time the powerful spiritual truth that you cannot outgive God. My parents were the kind they put in the dining room a map on the wall, and around it they taped all the missionary cards of the people they supported. So again, bring the friends over, and they'll be like, my friends will be like, what is that? The map of the world? Like, you guys are weird. That's what we thought they were thinking. But nobody ever actually said that. We were just like wondering, like, our parents are different. But as I got older, what a joy. My mom's roommate in college went into the jungle right after college. When she graduated, she did some training, went into the jungle in Peru. She spent 2 weeks on a little trail passing through the jungle where the animals crossed, hoping the hunters would come and she could make contact with this tribe that they knew was in there. So now she's like 75 years old. She broke down their language, made contact, met the people, broke down their language, translated the New Testament, and is translating some parts of the Old Testament, working with Wycliffe Bible translators. And missionaries here support that. It's amazing to grow older and to look back and to see what God has done. And to say we've had the privilege of being a part in some small way of some of that. So Faith Promise is a powerful teacher, faith builder, that teaches us, shows us how to walk the talk in terms of our emotional or financial priorities. Jesus said, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. Well, where would you like your heart to be when this year is over? What would you like the message of your life to be when you look back across 2018? Your job may change. What you study will change. You're a student. But your life includes a mission. It goes beyond your job. Do you know what your mission is? Do you know why you do what you do? Thanks, my friend. Missionary involvement is not only about going to an exotic place or having some extraordinary foreign adventure, but missions means making yourself available to God wherever you are for whatever He asks you to do. Starting with, be still and know that I am God. So I called this message, Let Your Life Speak. That's just a title I borrowed from, I like to borrow titles of books. Parker Palmer is a guy's name. Vocation, he said, does not mean a goal that I pursue. It means a calling that I hear. Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. For example, I told my life I wanted me to be a professional baseball player. But when I finally listened to the reality of who I was, I saw that that wasn't really a possibility. The question is, who am I? I am a child of God, loved and called to serve the people around me, even the ones I don't know. I can do this best when I begin to understand God's love for me. He loves me. He loves you. Do you let God love you? So Parker Palmer again says, vocation doesn't come from willfulness. It's not like something I can choose and make happen. Vocation comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it's truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about. Or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest, good my intentions. In other words, if I keep trying to imagine that I'm this amazing person or different person than I am, it's better just to get in touch with who am I really? Who did God create me to be? Stop trying to be somebody else. Don't be afraid to listen to your life. God is working in your life. He wants you and me to grow in self-awareness. He wants us to listen to what our life is saying. Listen. God will speak to you. What does your life sound like? Noise? Peace? Purpose? Confusion? Joy? Shame? Guilt? Grace? Is the message good? Is it clear? Do you wish it were different? When I was in 6th grade, I thought I was going to be a Wycliffe Bible translator. I thought it was like a glorified Boy Scout, going into the jungles, learning a language. I mean, I read all these books. I met these missionaries. I thought I might be a sports star, make lots of money, play in front of the crowd, just play the game that I loved. I thought I would have lots of money to give. One day we would win the sweepstakes, get the right sticker, and that's the way it was back then. I never thought I would become a pastor. That was the last thing in my mind. You know, I never even saw a pastor that I thought, I would love to be that guy. I also thought that church was something Christians had to do. So I liked going to church, and most of the time I did. But I thought church was something that Christians had to do, but really all the good stuff happened somewhere else. So a missionary would come in and tell about great things God did somewhere where we worked. Things like that. And I said, well, I want to be where the good stuff happens. And in Colombia, working with Lisa's parents who had a Bible study in their home that grew into a church, that grew into a really large church that planted other churches and ministries. And we saw God working in so many ways in so many people's lives. I said, the local church, that's the place where I want to give my life. And God, instead of giving me money and travels and the things that I hoped for, He put me in a place where my greatest joy is meeting some of the world's greatest needs. And the whole world comes through our church there in a little street corner in Montevideo. Frederick Buechner says that the place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Maybe God is calling you this weekend to discover a place of greater joy and deeper gladness than anything you've known. Let your life speak. Be an example. Lead with your life. So a couple of verses I want to read to you from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11, and then 14 to 21. And I'm just going to paraphrase a few things. You can look it up and read through it later. The Apostle Paul, he wrote a lot of things. Some wise people, smarter than I am, have disagreed about some of the interpretations. Peter said that reading Paul could be difficult. So don't be put off if you don't always understand everything completely. But Paul, in these verses I'm going to share, is basically saying, let your life speak. Let your life speak. It's the answer to the existential riddle that Russell Crowe was asking about meaning and purpose. These verses say why our choices, attitudes, and actions echo in eternity. Paul said, since we know what it is to fear the Lord means to have awe and wonder and amazement. Since we know what that is, we try to persuade others. What we are is plain to God, and it's Christ's love that compels us. The love of Christ. He died for all, so that those who live, you and I, should no longer live for themselves, but for Him who died for them. That's a purpose and a meaning for life. It's not about me. It's about honoring God through serving others. All of this, Paul says, comes from God. All the newness of life, all the privilege of serving and participating comes from God. He reconciled us to Himself through Christ, and He gave us a ministry of reconciliation. You know the word reconciliation? It's like bringing people together. When there's barriers and there's problems, bringing people together. Bringing them together with God. God does that. And then us working to be people of peace. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors. The scripture right before that says, God has committed to us, to you and me. Pender, wherever we are around the world, He's committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore His ambassadors, as though God were making His appeal through us. The Message version says, become a friend of God. He's already your friend. So the love of Christ compels us. Nothing is greater, no love is grander, no cause is more compelling. The joy and the peace of the Christian life comes in sharing what you've already received. He empowers us, He teaches us to be, by His power, to make disciples in all the world, in the places where we live. We're the carriers of the peace of God. We are to be the peace, bring the peace, pass the peace, promote the peace, provide the peace. You think of any more peace? Well, I just want you to remember peace. That's what God's given to you, wants to give you more of, so that you'll overflow. That hope and peace will overflow to others. God is making His appeal through us. He will take care of the great echo as you and I let our life speak. He'll take the sound of our life song and cause it to echo for all of eternity. I just want to quickly close with another movie illustration. I hope you attended or saw a showing of Darkest Hour. Fantastic movie, powerful film. It just showed a few weeks in the life of one of the most memorable people of the 20th century, Winston Churchill. And he had very little to recommend him, no one thought he could be a great prime minister in England, but he was pushed into the forefront and given the role. He said, I'm only getting the job because it's a sinking ship. It's not a gift, it's a revenge. So it was England's darkest hour, the darkest hour in all of Europe. You know the story and the outcome. And that movie powerfully reminds us that one life, speaking truth to power, hope to hate, one life appointed by God in a given time and place can change the course of history. Your choices today and every day about yourself, your family, your culture, your parents, your young people, your willingness to live for God, those choices matter. They will echo in eternity. May God give us grace and mercy to hear his message for us today.